Welcome to another episode of Mysteries Unknown. In tonight's podcast, I've got Derek with me, and Derek had a lot of strange things start happening on his property last year, and he's done a lot of investigations, and he's going to talk about a lot of weird things that's happened on this property. This is a good one, guys. You don't want to miss it. Thank you so much for supporting this channel, but let's just jump right into the story. Derek, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's good to be here.
Glad to have you here, man. I'm excited to hear about this experience that happened last year in Oklahoma, but why don't you just take us back and start from the beginning?
Well, I've been here. I've lived my whole life in Oklahoma. Grew up on a ranch, a lot of family land. Been in the woods my whole life, hunting, hiking, just looking around. And so pretty familiar with the woods and the sign you'll see. Been a hunter all my life. I'm used to seeing animals. And on this land that this particular activities were happening, we had some cattle on. Again, it's family land we've had for my whole entire life, 40 years, and I've never seen anything like this. So, in a little backstory, is I grew up on a semi-private zoo, as well as a big cattle ranch. So we had cats, big cats, cougars, monkeys, any animal you can name, and then we got just strictly into primates. So I'm familiar with primate behavior, primate smell, and maybe I'll elaborate a little more on that later. So that's kind of my history and background. So going forward to what I found this year was it was late February, and my wife and son was wanting to go out deer shed hunting. And I'd never been, just out specifically looking for sheds. So we went out in the woods and was looking around and started seeing these trees that were, they had to be broken within that day and probably, I would say, no later, because I came back several days after that just trying to investigate more, and they'd already turned color. So when we found these trees, they were green, just freshly bent, broken, twisted, and bent, and they were all down these cattle trails. And what was weird was it was in a straight line. So not all of them were down cattle trails, but at first when we were looking at it, it was a straight line through the woods. You could look and just see where something had walked through there and bent these over and twisted them. And the trees or saplings and trees range in size from about 1 inch to probably 4 to 5 inches, and they had been broken, like I said, twisted, split in two and twisted, and some of them were lower to the ground, which I would attribute to maybe cows, and then the rest were 3, 4, 5 foot off the ground. There was one, I've got a picture of myself standing by. I'm 6'2", and it's bent right at the top of my head, and it's bent in a 90-degree angle, about 2-inch tree. And I tried with all my might and couldn't even make a little bow in the thing. And this thing's bent over 90 degrees, not broke off, just bent, and 90 degrees. So we ended up putting a trail camera there and got a lot of empty pictures. So flash forward, maybe the next day or so, I have an uncle, and it's actually his property. It's about 400 acres of woods and pasture. And my uncle's real skeptical, just kind of real black and white, and I was just explaining to him as we were walking through the woods. I'm telling my wife, I've never seen anything like this. This is very strange. And I was just picking up on that. And so we run into my uncle, and he's shed hunting at the same area because he's got a deer stand back there, and they were just out in the woods messing around. And I started showing him. And by the end of me showing him everything that I'd found at that time, he never admitted it, but you could tell his opinion had changed, that it is very strange. And actually about 7-8 months later, I did get a confession of him that he thought that it was really strange, and there's definitely something going on. So I keep investigating. This is the weirdest thing. And I grew up in these woods. I've seen these trees. I've walked these trails. I've never seen anything like this. And it was probably in the order of 50 to 100 trees, spread out over maybe 3/8 of a mile, half a mile. And so I go back every day for about a week and just walk the woods looking, and I found other stuff, more trees bent, Just very, very strange. I found one area that was it was just a complete circle in the woods of all these saplings just flattened. And they weren't broken, they were just flattened. And there was a trail, it was inside the woods. It wasn't like it was out in the pasture and a tractor could have ran over it, or there wasn't a road right beside it. It was right inside the woods. And I thought, well, maybe the bulls had got in here and got in a fight or something. I don't know. So I didn't think nothing of it. Well, on that same visit to the woods, I ended up walking up on I found a doe skull. I found some other cow bones, and I found a 8-point buck skull, and I found another spike skull within about 10-yard circle, just piled up in the woods back here. And it was just so unusual because they were piled all there close together, and not spread out through the woods further. And another strange detail to that is the only other buck skull I've ever found in my life happened about 6 years ago, and it was right there at that exact area. And so it's just weird that whatever predator's out there dragging these bones or these animals to that area, it definitely has an area where it likes to eat. We've had cow bones, cows die all over our land. And so, but the coyotes and the other animals just scatter them, across all the property. So that they definitely don't take them back and pile them up in one area.
That's not normal behavior, something that, any other predator out there is going to do. I don't think there's going to be I don't know, any kind of small predator that's going to drag all those bones up like that, right? That Bigfoot's the only thing that makes sense with that. So that's really creepy, man. That's scary. I would definitely be careful when you're out there.
I've never went looking for Bigfoot or considered Bigfoot. I've never disregarded it, just openly skeptical about him, or Sasquatch, whatever you want to call him. So we got out in the woods, or we was there. I pick up the skull and my phone starts acting completely weird. I've got the same phone still. I've never had an electronic issue with the phone up to that point and not since. And all I was trying to do is I took a picture of it and I was trying to send it to my wife, and my phone starts just blinking. And the screen was just flashing, and I could not send nothing. And I had to walk out of the woods a couple 100 yards, and my phone started working again. It's never done it since. And so I know there's a lot of superstition kind of tied to, some people believe about Bigfoot. I don't know, but that was just really weird. So after all that happened, I thought, this is something strange enough that I want to get hold of an expert. I didn't know who to call or who to get hold of, so I just get on Facebook and found the Native Oklahoma Bigfoot Research Organization and reached out to them, and they got right back with me. And so I sent them some pictures of all the stuff, and they said, we believe you definitely have some activity that's very strange. We'd like to come out and tour the property. So this was about April, I think, by the time they could get out to the property. And I showed them everything. And, I found some other stuff since then. They'd actually recommended putting a voice recorder in the woods, which I did. And the very first night I heard it's an unusually loud tree crack. So that was very strange. I'm like, this is the first time I've even put something in the woods, and I'm already getting feedback. And in between the time that I talked to them first over email to the time they came out to the property, we cast 3 footprints. It's just so weird. I said, every time I go looking, I keep finding stuff. And every time I find something and I'm like, well, this ain't nothing, it comes out looking like a footprint. I'm like, why does every mud hole out here look like a footprint? So anyways, they've seen the cast, they've heard the recording. They all, still thinking it's something. So we tour the property once. We do some video. I forgot to mention before they came, on one of these trails, it's called a structure, and it just looks like a teepee of all these trees piled up. And after investigating it further, 4 or 5 of the trees, they're about 8-inch in diameter, and 4 or 5 of them aren't even local to that area. They had been, meaning the stump's not in the ground there. The tree had been brought from somewhere else in the woods and stacked there. We found a couple of, that's the only structure. This one's probably 10 or 12 trees. We found some other trees that had been moved and then crossed with no local stump. And also right there next to the structure, it's a really thin diameter, really small diameter sapling that has been wrapped around and then pinned back into the ground. We call it the portal. And it's right there beside the structure. I walked through it because why not? Nothing happened that I know of. So I'm in talks with the Bigfoot Native Oklahoma, or we call him No-Bro. And actually right now I am a member of since then, and I've been on a few investigations with them. I've been to the Hanobi Bigfoot conference. We did an expedition a couple weeks later out there in Hanobi. But going back to my story, a couple months after that, I want to say it was in June. It was right before 4th of July. They came out and spent the night. We stayed up all night. We had thermal cameras. We had night vision cameras. We had
We'll get back to the show in just a second, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for liking and watching this video. Would you guys consider being a member? I got all kinds of cool things coming down the pipeline. Lots of perks if you join and become members of this tribe. We're building a really cool community, so be a part of that, be a member. Let's just jump right back into the story. Thanks, guys.
What is the microphone? I can't remember the name with the it looks like a radar dish. So we set out all night. We blasted a call every hour and just monitored. We set out 3 trail cameras, and every one of us set out a voice recorder. And it was a lot of fun. We stayed up all night. Unfortunately, we didn't have nothing too wild happen. We sent that. The gentleman that's part of No-Bro, that is our PR guy, does our videos, is also known as the Squatch Ranger. So he put that out on his channel on YouTube. Maybe the next week or two was 4th of July was coming up, and I'd put out my voice recorder for 4 days to record over the 4th of July. And man, it took me forever to listen to all the audio, but there's a lot of interesting stuff in there. And I went in and made a spreadsheet, time-stamped it all. But there's anything from, you've got something next to my recorder snoring. We've got several tree cracks, some whoops, some really low growls. Like, I had to have headphones on. You can hear them, but if you take off the headphones, try to play it over a speaker, they're inaudible. But they're definitely growls. It's super low frequency. Native American drums for whatever reason. And you're talking, this is out in the middle of 400 acres. There's not a house close. And so it was pretty wild to listen to all that. So I turned that into the No-Bro guys, and they're still reviewing since. I haven't had any more footprints. The area where I found my prints was a little creek bed, and the grass has grown up in it right now. So I'm kind of looking forward to, hunting season just in, and I'll be back out in the woods investigating my area. So that had happened, and then another event on the property. Me and my son was out on this. It's probably a 4 or 5 acre pond, and we were out fishing on it and heard it was the most unusual sound I'd ever heard, but it was like a howl or a growl, and it was like, when a coyote howls, you hear one, and one can sound like 3 or 4. It just sounds like a whole bunch of them. And whatever this wasn't a coyote, but it definitely sounded like 3 or 4 of them. It was more than one. And I'm standing up in the boat holding my phone and just dumbfounded. I didn't even record, it was just so unusual. I was just standing there, didn't want to miss what I was hearing. And so after that, now I can't get my son to go back out in the woods with me. So I ruined my wife on being in the woods with me. And so I've since all that had happened, No-Bro had made me an investigator, like I said. And just looking forward to some more wild experiences.
Man, there is a ton of what I would call trace evidence, on your property. And I know in law enforcement, very rarely did we see a crime happen. It was always like the trace evidence of it. And you definitely have something on your property, and all indicators, go to Bigfoot. I'm no expert, but with those vocalizations and the footprints and what got me is you being 6 foot tall and those trees being, the way that they were. There's no way anything that wasn't extremely big and strong would have been able to do that. I always ask my guests, and you kind of answered that, but with all that being said, it's obviously changed your life, but how has it affected your life?
When I first talked to No-Bro, they said, be very careful when you go out in the woods. And I'd never considered, I'll go out in the woods at night, anytime. And now, I'm definitely looking around more, paying closer to attention to what's going on. Just keeping my eye out for things I would have never considered. Me and my son was walking through the woods, actually, maybe a few days before we found all this, and we was way out in the woods and down a cattle trail. And he said, "Look, this looks like a footprint." And we weren't talking Bigfoot, nothing. And I said, that's probably just the way the cattle stepped. And it wasn't 2 or 3 days later, all this stuff started happening, and we did cast some footprints. So he's got a pretty sharp eye.
That's crazy. It makes you think twice about going in the woods. And, faith is very important to me. And I look through everything through that lens and perspective. And there's a lot of things in God's universe we don't understand. But I would love to know, what do you think Bigfoot is, Derek?
With the spectrum of all the supernatural stuff that happens with him, allegedly, I think he's a relic hominid, honestly. I've listened to the Blurry Creatures podcast a lot, and they would have me believing that maybe a remnant Nephilim hybrid, something. But I definitely just believe he's probably a relic hybrid or a hominid that hasn't been, officially discovered. I don't know about the supernatural stuff. Definitely open to it. I would definitely love to experience it happening.
Yeah, that's a good answer, and it would explain a lot. I have a lot of guests on here that have a lot of different things that happen that, it just doesn't make sense unless you check off that supernatural box. And, I think maybe they're Nephilim. There's a lot of things and opinions I have about it. But, you mentioned earlier that you grew up on a zoo and you were around a lot of primates. And so you probably have a pretty unique perspective than more than other people do, because you've been around different primates. Do you think, with all, some of the evidence and being around primates, do you think that's kind of, would fit into that box?
Yeah. I want to see some more behavior. Nobro and I agree, is we probably think we had a juvenile come through, which is why everything's tore up, all the trees and such. But what's strange is, and I'll circle back to the primates, but what's strange is there's this one specific area I forgot to mention that we found like a nest, and also a gifting rock. We was driving out through the pasture around the corner here, and there's a trail, and it's just clear, and I didn't know where it went, so I jumped off our side-by-side, and about 5 yards, it's just a short trail between all these. It's perfectly cleared out between these briars, and it goes to it just opens up into maybe a 5-foot circle of ground that's completely clean, and there's a huge rock there on the ground that's just completely flat, and it's pushed up against the back of a tree, and that's it. The trail doesn't go through it. It ends at that circle. It's a dead end. And I thought, well, and it's clean. Something used the heck out of this trail. It's dirt, and nothing's growing there. The briars are pushed away. So I thought, well, this is strange. So I left. I didn't have anything with me but a golf ball for some reason in the side-by-side. So I left the golf ball on the rock, and I came back a week later, and it was gone. And I searched the area, and I thought, well, maybe a raccoon had found it and carried it off. I know they like to do stuff like that. And still not ruling that out, but the golf ball's not in that area anymore. And so I tried a pink teddy bear, and nothing ever took it. But what's really weird is the back, at the backside where the flat rock is pushed up against a tree, that tree broke off, but the top half of the tree is gone. It's not in that area anymore, nowhere. The briars are flat or laid over, but the tree didn't fall with the briars. It's not under the briars. It's not there. That part of that tree is gone. And still haven't figured that one out. So, but it didn't, whatever it did, it took the tree, but it didn't take the teddy bear. But right here at this nest area, when I was in high school, just a young, dumb kid, we'd go camp and party back there. And this part of the woods always just had that eerie feeling when you went back there for me. And, I would kind of just stray away from it when I was alone. I wouldn't go back there. Never had a reason why. And this is where we're finding all the main sign of where this thing had done what it had done. So I'm wondering if maybe it's been on my property, or it's just definitely my property is a crossroad for it. But I've always had this weird feeling. Back to the primates, we wonder if maybe they weren't a reason that maybe this activity is happening locally. Is maybe we had primates for 36 years, so maybe there was some pheromones or or some smells or whatever or calls even, that if this thing is any type of primate, maybe that drew them into this area, and that's why they've stayed.
I could see how that would attract them to your area. That would make a lot of sense, especially if they were on that property for so long. It makes you wonder if they're migrators. I don't know. A lot of people talk about traveling through cave systems and things like that, and maybe that's why we can't see them. But it makes you wonder if it was either just traveling through your area or if it stopped and is still kind of there. I would say maybe it's still there if you heard those vocalizations not that long ago, really.
Yeah. I haven't. So I've recorded after the 4th of July. I recorded all that, and I tried 2 other times, didn't get anything. So I don't know if it had moved out of the area or I just didn't catch anything. So still trying to determine if I think it's seasonal or if it's living here year round. So that was early February when all this began. Right now is perfect time. I'll be out there looking, and when February rolls around, I'll definitely have a head on a swivel.
Make sure to keep us posted. I would love to hear if you see or hear anything else. I know my audience enjoyed that, and looking forward to seeing what you discover out there. But I tell everybody, man, just be careful, because you never know with those things. But guys, if you have a mystery you want to share with me, you can send it to me by email at video@jscreativear.com. And as always, I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Stay prayed up. We'll talk to you in the next episode.
You have believed a lie that Satan has planted in you somewhere along the way, that you have no value, but God's word says that you were fearfully and wonderfully made. It's all through his word. You had value, you matter, and God paid the ultimate price for you. You have so much to offer the kingdom, and you have a testimony that only you can bring, that somebody needs to hear. So don't look at your past as failures. Look at your past as a witness to help somebody, and it's helped you grow and bring you to this point, and there is nothing that grace can't reach. His word says that he will cast our sins as far as the east is from the west. And once he does that, he doesn't see your failures anymore. He sees you as his child. So there's hope for you today. You have value. You matter so much to God, and there are people waiting and counting on you to share your testimony. So don't give up hope. Know who you are in Christ. Stop believing the lie that Satan is telling you. You have so much value today, right in this moment.